Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to a beautiful Sunday morning. The days are starting to get longer now since we've had the winter solstice yesterday, last night. So summer's on the way. It even looks a bit more like summery today than yesterday. So perfect opportunity for a retreat, meditation retreat here, and especially with Ajahn Tiradhammo, our special guest, who many of you were with him on Thursday evening for the session, and also last year when he was here. And so Ajahn Tiradhammo's been able to come up for us this time, finding some space within the busy routine of the monastery in Sydney, sort of with Ajahn Kimavara, who's often away. So Ajahn Tiradhammo needs to sort of look after things, and to continue meditations and reflections on understanding the process of self-making, and also being beyond the process of self-making, which aligns with Ajahn Tiradhammo's most recent book, which many of you may have, but there's plenty of spare copies for those that didn't get a copy. Also, there's a few copies of his other two books up on the side there, so please help yourself to the books. And just as a bit of a brief for our scheduling for today, because we have a Buddhist monk with us, we'll be having our meal at 11, so like a forenoon meal, monastic style. And for that, the food that's come along will maybe get people to unwrap it and out of the fridge or whatever, put it out there, and then invite the Ajahn to come out. I'll offer the food to him, and then once that's all finished, once he's received his food, then we'll partake of the remaining food. And so lunch from 11 till 12, and then a couple of hours of afternoon meditation reflections to finish at 2 o'clock. So there's tea, coffee available there. There won't be a specified tea break, but just get some tea, coffee as you wish. And also, again, do take a copy of the book, and especially if you've loaned your copy to someone else, and so take another copy. There's plenty available. And for the most part, to have a mindful, meditative day. Certainly for us here, and also those people online, connecting in various places. So welcome, and have a mindful day at home, wherever you might be. And the recording will be up online in some few days later or so, so that those that have missed out, or if you do want to remind yourself, then you can look at the recording of the sessions. So Ajahn, thanks for coming, and please, we invite you to offer some teachings for us this day.
So, I guess I start off with a real bang. The Buddha's most profound insight, of course, was into the insubstantiality of self, which in the Buddhist time, as today, is quite a controversial theme. There's a basic underlying belief system, I guess you say cultural belief, that there's an eternal soul. Yes, right? I'm not in the conventional world, so I don't know, but people still believe in an eternal soul. In the Buddhist time, it was an eternal self with a capital S, you see. And so the Buddha, as a spiritual seeker, he tried to find this self. Just as many people today, they say, they got to find myself, right? My true self or something or other. And I was just remembering that in the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the highest of the needs is towards self-realization. It's a need. It's a fundamental human need. Besides, physical, the need to preserve the body, and the need for love and esteem and respect and things like this, but it's also a fundamental need to aspire to self-realization. So most people, every one of us has a seed, but how many of us are able to realize it, of course? And for some people, they just don't have the opportunity practically. If you haven't to spend all your energy just making enough to, to find enough food to eat, not much time, energy left for self-realization. Then there are those who, unfortunately, have the opportunity. I would say many people in the Western countries have opportunity, but just don't make use of it or don't come across the teachings available to make that accessible to them. They think it's something impossible. Do you think enlightenment is possible? Come on, everybody, be
Of course.
a little support for optimism.
That's why we're here.
It's unfortunate there's sort of a prevailing belief in many Buddhist Asian countries that it's just not possible to this day and age. It's impossible. So, the best you can do is perhaps create some skillful karma, make some merit for your future rebirth, positive future rebirth, maybe. But the Buddha said this is a not only Maslow, but the Buddha said this is the human this is a human as a universal aspiration and possibility to realize awakening. So I mean the only complication is that the basis, also a fundamental basis, we have what I would translate as a underlying disposition to ignorance. Well, we aren't we have a possibility, but we don't make use of this ability to study, investigate, to create wisdom, to realization. And most people just go along with the prevailing attitude, which is based on ignorance. There is a self here. Isn't that the prevailing culture, right? It's our prevailing culture is egocentric, and it's even compounded now by modern technology, yeah? By what they call it, social media. Yeah. Everything's about I. How many hits have I? How many likes have I got? No, I don't even bother with mine. Yeah. Probably if I looked at it, it would be an underlying disposition to, oh, is it good, positive or negative? But I'm so distressed by the negatives, dislike that I don't dare look. So anyway, the Buddha had this realization also, but he also, as a Buddha, that was one characteristic of a Buddha, he's able to teach the way to awaken, teach the path. In the Buddhist sort of historical context, no, I guess you'd say more like the tradition, the Buddhist tradition. The Buddha says that there are about 500. This is 500 is like many, it means many, 500 enlightened beings for every Buddha. So there are beings around who realize a similar thing, but aren't able to teach. It's very rare to have a teaching person, a teaching enlightened person. So we're very fortunate to be in this particular age when we have access to the Buddhist teachings. Otherwise, there is also traditional belief that it begins to fade out, and some people even talk about this as the age of darkness, and we're getting further and further away from the real teachings, or losing track of it. And the Buddha, it's not unique. The Buddha said, I just discovered an ancient path. It's been there all the time. But and I would say that this ancient path, as I mentioned on Thursday, was the path of selflessness. It's a universal teaching. To me, all the religions also teach that. The theistic religions, they emphasize the realization of God. But isn't God beyond yourself? As Meister Eckhart said, God enters into me to the degree I empty of myself. But who wants to lose their self, even for God? Even for God? So the Buddha was, as a teacher and as a extremely advanced meditator, I would say. Meditation in the Buddhist context is literally mental development. So the Buddha developed certain qualities. We're familiar with mindfulness and collectedness or samadhi, sati, samadhi. The Buddha developed those qualities to a very advanced degree, which is possible for the human being, the human brain to do that. And then through that development, he was able to penetrate through ignorance. He began to see things as they really are. I mean, fortunately, most of us see things as, not too bad. I mean, we aren't totally off, right? I mean, we're just slightly off. We don't quite see the way things really are, but enough to cope with reality, huh? So far anyway. And we have moments of clarity and obscurity, of course, too. But if we develop these mental qualities, the Buddhists say, we build them to the level of spiritual power, if you like, then they can cut through the veil of delusion, if you like. So the Buddha developed those to an extremely advanced degree. I mean, the history of the Buddha is that he started off with the traditional teachings in India, which emphasize what's called samadhi. I translate it as collectedness, sometimes translated as concentration. So the yogis in the Buddhist time, they were quite advanced meditators. They could develop meditation to very advanced degrees of concentration, to the level of the cessation of, no, that was the Buddhist one. It was neither perception nor non-perception. The universal consciousness, something like this, whatever that is. I'm not well trained in that, but I met some Thai meditation masters who are also very advanced degree in meditation. So I know it's possible. And then the Buddha himself, he really perfected, I would say, the development of sati or mindfulness. This word sati was available in the Buddhist time. It's a Sanskrit, Pali Sanskrit word, so it was available, but most people didn't realize the power of it, of mindfulness, full presence of mind. But the Buddha did recognize the value of this, so he also emphasized that. There's several scriptures in the Pali Canon specifically about developing this quality of sati. But I don't know too much about, the Brahmanical or Hindu teachings, but I don't think there's much teaching about sati there. Their emphasis was on mahasamadhi, focusing on samadhi. So they were very adept. So the Buddha's first teachers were these samadhi experts. He practiced it, and he was of course, maybe the Buddhist scriptures are a little bit biased, but he even perfected it beyond his teachers. To the degree his teachers said, you finished development of samadhi. You can even be a teacher with me, equal to me. But the Buddhist experience was this doesn't lead to what he defined as the cessation of suffering. Basically, samadhi is you get your mind very focused into a very, 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 very extreme state, and basically you forget yourself. If you're focused on the breathing, if you're 100% breathing, where are you? There's no breather, they're just breathing. But unfortunately, you can't stay there forever. Eventually you come out of it, back to the breather again. You're back to subject object again. So samadhi is the subject, us, me, focusing on the object, and in samadhi they come together. And you have unitary consciousness temporarily. And it can seem like, like God consciousness or something. I think that's what many, maybe this might have to be edited, but many Christian mystics experienced. They experienced very deep samadhi and had a unitary consciousness, and it is like, it is a godlike experience. So they mistake that. Well, they believe it's right, of course, and of course their theology is based on that. So that was it. That was the end of the story. They met God, and the yogis could do that. They met Brahma, in this samadhi state. But that's the highest they could do, and then they had to come out of it again. Okay, there is a residue. People who have developed certain degrees of samadhi, they can stay very blissed out, very, very peaceful, joy, peaceful. I mean, when I was in Thailand, developing this focused attention, and I was in a forest monastery was by myself, not talking for days and days, and just focus, 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 focus. And occasionally, the mind got so quiet, and I said, "Look, no greed, no aversion, no delusion. That's nibbana. I got it." Oops, greed. Oops. Oops, I lost it. Aversion. Oops. Back to the breath again. Went up and down like that. Eventually, I got really frustrated, and I thought, this doesn't work. This Buddhism doesn't work then. But then I had a book next to me, and I realized, it's Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, knowledge, wisdom. Oh, I forgot that part. So, so the wisdom part, from the Buddhist point of view, is the highest kind of wisdom comes from the development of sati and samadhi and energy, right effort. So we have to put these two together. It's a very balanced approach. And of course, they support each other. So of course, Ajahn Chah very simply said, the deeper the samadhi, the deeper the insight. So I think most people can attain a little bit of samadhi or collectedness. Depends how your temperament and depends on how much you develop it. It does take effort. It is kind of a conditioned experience. The more you practice, basically, the better you'll get at it. They're just kind of exercises and focusing your attention, just like concentration. In ordinary life, you can have concentration exercises, right? You decrease your concentration. Yeah. But the difficulty is that, again, it's very temporary, but it can't support. When the mind is more focused, the mind also calms down. There's samadhi is a principal characteristic of what's called calm meditation. So when the mind is focused, you notice it's calmer too. If your mind is scattered, away from the breath, you just contact the breath briefly, not very calm, is it? But the more you can contact one object, sort of the calmer the mind seems, because all the background distractions fade away. The only problem is they aren't gone. They just fade away temporarily. So you can I know some people are quite adept at concentration, but sometimes they have forgot about the wisdom faculty. So there's one person who came to a monastery in Switzerland, and she had a gift for focusing. She was actually a painter. So I guess the painting helped her to focus, So she was very gifted at meditation, at focusing meditation, concentration. But, her emotional life was a total disaster. She'd come to the monastery to get recharged. You would leave her family, come to the monastery, and she'd sit there. She'd go floating out of the room, go back home again, back to the monastery again, recharge. So I mean, it did help. It did help her, Without that, I don't know what happened to her. But if you bring in mindfulness now, try and bring a little bit of awareness from the calm mind back into your life. Now you bring calmness into this, frantic emotional situation, different experience. And maybe you could even see, as I mentioned on Thursday, that one of the exercises in developing mindfulness was to observe the arising quality of things, the arising qualities of things. Your mind is calmer, perhaps you can notice the arising of it. Your mind isn't very calm. Most of us can only see when it's there. When anger is there, it's hard to ignore, but if your mind is calmer, perhaps you can see the irritation building up. And all these things, like anger, is conditioned. It's not a thing in itself. There's a conditioned complex there. It's a process. If you don't catch it, of course, the process after a while can build up to such energy and complication that it's self-perpetuating. You get angry and you get angry at the anger. Angry at being angry about the anger to the anger. rage. You just have to scream. Take some Valium or something. What do they take nowadays? Or go and people have their coping mechanisms. Like go for a walk or sit in the park or something, or breathing, right? But one of the exercises in developing mindfulness, right mindfulness, is to also bring awareness to the rising qualities, how it's beginning. Okay, it's the I guess the beginning, just observing something like anger, for example, is already quite an advanced state. Who can observe their anger objectively? Hmm? There's more calmness in the mind, more samadhi, if you like. Gives you a bit of space. Gives you a bit of space, calm down the reactiveness of the mind. So you got a bit of space there. It depends on the degree of calmness you have. Sometimes if the mind isn't very calm, there's just a little, a millisecond of calm before reactivity comes in again. But the more you develop it, the more space you get. There's even one I should mention, but there's a situation I had in Thailand when I was developing this focusing meditation intensely in the forest in Thailand. In the morning, we go off an alms round to collect our food. And one of the places I'd go to was a motel. And it was always uncertain if the people would see us or not, see me or not. But I had to stand there, wait. So I was standing there waiting with my eyes closed, meditating. I heard the door open. I thought, aha, they see me. So I opened my eyes and they let the guard dog out. And this guard dog came bounding down the path, rah, at my face. And I was so spaced out, basically. I just looked at it. No reaction. And the dog was so freaked out, no reaction. He kind of just sat down and walked away. This guy isn't human. He's a piece of wood. He's a log. So you see, I had no reaction. That had no reaction, you see. So, but then I walked away and I thought, oh my God, I'm crazy. I could have lost my nose. That's But I didn't think about it. I was just so spaced out with focusing on breathing. I wasn't myself anymore temporarily till I stepped away a little bit and then began to think about it. Wow. And my old reactions came in again. See, my self returned, my old self reactions came in. But the Buddha gave us the tools to use. So, I guess you can say, on one hand, you know, trying to realize the cessation of I making. It's helpful to understand what the I making process is. So Buddha also investigated that. It's first of all to realize. I mean, that's why I like to use this term, because people would translating the Buddhist concept. What the Buddha realized, is literally anatta, which means literally no self or not self. But it comes across to most people as there's no self. So to lose yourself, it doesn't work that way. Here, I am losing myself, which is called in psychology psychosis, right? So, but if we understand that the self is made up, so it's conditioned. So basically, there is a self. You could say more like there is a sense of a self, and you need it. Necessary is your point of reference, reality. You see, but it's only a temporary thing. It's not absolute, eternal, permanent entity. It's a functioning process. So when you can recognize that it's being made, it can also be unmade. So the Buddha was pointing out really that it's not that the danger is a self, but it's a relationship to the self, the grasping of self. You grasp it, you turn it into a thing. Then you really think it's real, then you fight with it now. But if you can open up, release the grasping, the self, when you need the self, you call it into presence. You don't need it anymore, let go of it. It's not a matter of denying it, but it's not a matter of affirming it either. Just recognizing it as a process, an ongoing process. So the Buddha, you could say maybe the simplest exercise is to try and be aware. It's an I-making process. The Buddha actually put it in three ways: I-making, mine-making. We take things to ourselves as mine, and there's an underlying disposition to conceit. The underlying disposition is it's quite natural that as the ego develops, it refers to an ego and self, the point of reference. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't develop a normal relationship with reality. You'd be psychotic, basically. So we need it for in a certain sense. We take it too seriously. We take it as a thing. So if we look at it as a sense of there's I making, well, we just to try to observe how the I arises, sense of I arises. And probably the easiest one is to do it with regard to the senses. That we have sight, we have seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, or some kind of mental activity. Six senses. And if you can bring attention there, you notice, the reality is this I sees an object. That's true. Then the brain processes the information, yeah, and then you'll hear right here a little voice if you're observant says, "Oh, I am seeing." Where'd the I come from? It just snuck in there somewhere. Who said that? The physical eye sees, but the eye doesn't see rightly. So we say that little I coming up, the arising of I, is kind of superficial or artificial. Okay, it's an easy, it's an easy way to explain it, but it's wrong. And then we take the easy way out and we get deluded. Then we increase our ignorance. We don't really see it as it really is. We increase our ignoring it. So if you bring attention to the sense process, then well, when you're sitting here, you close your eyes, but there's hearing, there's smelling, well, very subtle, and then there's touching. Touching maybe is the strongest one when you're sitting there. You bring attention to the body and aware of the bodily sensations. You can observe just the sensation and see if you can just be with the sensation. If you're observing it, you may notice the old process is, there's sensation and I'm feeling my leg, my body, my breath, just it's extra. It doesn't need to be there. Yeah, but if you don't catch it, it sneaks up on you. It's an extra to the real perceptual process. It's extra to it. You can observe it, recognize, oh, there's that phony again. There's that. there's that guy. Is that guy sneaking into the process? My eye is a guy, so it's not him or her. It's me. Anyway, but if you notice it just coming in, just try and stay with the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, the touching, the best you can. And of course, maybe at the beginning we're using thinking, so still a little bit theoretical, but bring awareness, if you bring mindfulness to the direct experience, mindfulness of body, of the feelings, of the conditions of mind or states of mind that arise, just observing them as they are, without adding any interpretation to them, bringing in the I. The rising of I is extra to the whole process. And if you can just put it aside, if you just recognize it, say, oh, this is an intruder. This is just intrudes into the process, and it actually disturbs what you really see, what you hear and smell. If I can see things, and then I look at this, and personally, I don't know what that is. It surprises me. I have no memory of these things here. So then, if I bring myself into it, confusion, maybe even fear, is it going to explode? Is it is it? But if I just notice, all it is, black square, just seeing. There's no personal investment in it. can leave my reactions out of it, relieve my fear, my anger, my confusion. That gets left out with leave my eye out. See, it's just a picture. That's all it is. Picture, information, visual input. Simple. End of story. It can be end of story. No problems. No reaction to it. Possible? Well, it takes a little practice. So maybe we should do some practice. Okay. So just taking up a reasonably comfortable sitting position. And to know if the body, to directly know if the body is comfortable, bring awareness to the sensation of body, sense of touch. And you can give it emphasis to this by, say, focusing on some obvious sensation. Say your hands touching, for example. Our hands are quite sensitive, to just bring awareness to the hands. Warm or cold, tense or relaxed, for example. Maybe at the beginning, not much experience of it. Can't really sense the sensation there. But again, you can refine that awareness. Maybe you can begin to learn the language of sensation, the language of direct experience. Like a sensation is not a thought. We use these terms as thoughts, as concepts, but go to the direct experience. What is cool hand? What is warm hand? What is tense hand? Maybe even try it. Tense them up. That's tense. This is relaxed. Tense, relaxed. To go right to the language of the body. Well, to read the body, not just have stay in your concept of how the body is. And there are a variety of sensations that we can read in the body. The body touching, the body sitting on the ground, pressure. Backside on the floor, the cushion, chair. Just that steady pressure. And there is bring attention to the breathing. There's a more varied sensation. The sensation of inhalation, sensation of exhalation. Some sensations change quite quickly. Some are pretty steady. Some are so-called pleasant. Some are not so pleasant. But just trying to observe the range of sensation that actually represents our body, our experience of body. We say body must have a concept about it, but it is these various sensations that is direct experience of body. And as we take up a regular object of focus, like breathing, and just observe how consistently your attention can dwell on the object. Or does it obviously just slip away or drift away or is pulled away from that object of focus. By doing so, you recognize the condition of the mind at this time. And that's the way we have to work with it this time. And generally, if the mind is a bit restless or distracted, it can be helpful to try to emphasize more focus, put a bit of effort into following the breathing more closely, attentively. Sometimes it helps the mind settle down. Other times it may make the mind more restless. Bring attention back to the body. You relax the body then. Restlessness of mind is often restlessness of body too. So relax the body, you relax the mind. Sometimes using a very narrow object like the sensation of breathing at the nostrils can be helpful. Other times maybe a more general observing the breathing process can be more helpful. Give the mind a bit more space, observe the whole process, the body, the abdomen rising, chest rising with the inhalation, and then reverse with the exhalation. And then one exercise in observing the possible arising of I is to bring attention to a particular sensation. Is there any particular sensation? Yeah. Even the breathing. Mm-hmm. You just observe the breath, or is there a little sense of a breather behind it? Mind drifts off. What am I doing? I'm watching the breath. Okay. Or can you just be aware of breathing process? Actually, the body breathes by itself. You don't need to make an effort for me to breathe. Many times me gets in the way of breathing. Or you can try this exercise, say, with something like sound, hearing. You stay with the sound itself. So we can try and alternate the practice between developing calmer states of mind or developing more awareness or mindfulness of the various sensations, the various sense impressions. The calmer mind is able to observe more carefully, closely, the sense impressions. They are just a conditioned process. Bring attention to the condition of mind at this time, noticing the degree of collectedness, calm, noticing the degree of clarity or lack of clarity. Just notice the conditions as they really are. And as you wish them to be or hope to be, but just as they are. You notice some self-reference arising in it. Oh, my mind is not as clear as it should be, or maybe there's even more personalization of it. Oh, I can't meditate, or I'm no good, or taking a guide from the Buddhist teachings. It's all those I-ness, self-referencing is artificial. It's extra. The direct experience, how the mind is, the condition of mind is the way things really are right this time, at this time. Bring attention to the sensation of body right now. Just notice the conditions of body. There's a sensation, there's probably a feeling tone to it, pleasant, unpleasant. And you notice any self-referencing there. I don't like it. I like it. I wish it was different. Makes more complication and in a way really needless suffering because the body is this way, whether we like it or not. Then you can relax the posture and open your eyes. So be helpful to try to extend this practice outside just a sitting posture. So we can extend it to what we call the walking meditation posture. The Buddha gave 4 postures: sitting, walking, standing, lying down. I don't want to talk about lying down yet. But for the walking meditation, it also is a little bit is helpful because sitting is more passive, walking is a bit more active, so get a bit of a balance. It is the same principle exercise. I mean, to emphasize more focus, more collectedness, you can try to focus on one point. We say the sensation of feet touching the ground, because that's a most obvious sensation if you're walking, especially if you're barefoot. Especially if there are ants around. But of course, there are other sensations too. That's a little bit of a complication, is that when you're more active, then there's more movements of the body, for example. Not only do your feet touch the ground, but you have to move your knees and your body and your shoulders, and we just try to keep the upper part of the body reasonably relaxed and not active. To swing your arms, for example, we just try to keep our arms reasonably collected, settled, and just make the main movement in the feet, in the legs and the feet. And this, like I say, the strongest sensation is the impact. It's like the breathing. Some people can observe the whole breath coming into the body. Others, it's only the impact of the breath at one point, you see, either here or even in the abdomen rising. But of course, walking is not just feet touching the ground. Otherwise, it's a whole many muscles. And there was somebody, I gave this exercise to somebody in Switzerland about being aware of the feet touching the ground, and she said, she said, I can be aware of all the, is it 22 bones in the foot? Is it? Anybody a physiologist? I said, 22 bones? He said, yeah. I said, what's your job? Physiology? She said, physiotherapist, she said. She's trained to know all this, so just be aware of the feet, touch, the feet, not every bone. My toe touches, but not my pinky toe or something. I mean, if you want to, you can, but I mean, it's getting a bit too complicated. But generally, the beginning, I would just say, just try and be aware of the general foot touching the ground. I mean, of course, there's actually more movements to walking, isn't there? But don't get too complicated at the beginning, just feet touching the ground. And then, if you notice the mind is reasonably calm, you can try to develop more awareness of what else there is. Especially usually it's better to have a walking path, say, roughly about 30 steps. Depends on the place you're in, but generally about 30 steps is average to get into the flow of walking, but not, you don't get lost. Walk up the top of the hill over there. Sometimes if it's too short, you just get into the flow of walking and you just got to turn around, turn around, turn around. So you don't really get the flow of walking. So about 30 steps. Everybody's different. And then you get to the end of the path, you stop. And you can try some standing. You stand there, maybe where the body's standing. Now there's still the impression of the feet on the ground, but then you can expand the awareness. There's also, you can start top of your head, for example, or at the very bottom of your feet and move up. Other sensations there. Maybe there's tension in your lower back. Relax that up to your, maybe there's coolness on your forehead from the wind or the sun on your head or something. And just move attention through the body to observe any sensation and see if you can just observe the sensation again. Or, oh, I'm catching a cold. I. Even I'm walking, of course, too, at the beginning, and then turn around and then stop again, standing and walking again. The other side. You can count the steps or you can just designate, put something there, a leaf or something, or a stick or something. As you walk back and forth, you can focus on, you develop in the focusing, just stepping, just stepping, just stepping, and your mind just, you got to keep your eyes open so there's a few more temptations to look outside, but just bring attention back, bring attention back. It's training the focus. Or you can also stop and observe, seeing, what happens in the process of seeing. There is, I say, there's sight, there's a, there's color and shape hits the eye. That's all it is, color and shape. Your brain says, tree or whatever. There's a whole, perceptual process there. Then a tree. Oh, I like tree. Oops, that's extra. Tree didn't say that. Tree says, I like you. Be careful, don't go there. So talking to trees. And if you do get a bit caught in it, analyzing it too much or get lost, just back to feet touching the ground again, back there. Keep the simple again, back to the focus, back to the point of reference, and then the deeper awareness comes from deeper collectedness, calm, seeing clearly, without seeing through all the interpretation. In other words, you make around it. That's all. It's all very, very. Of course, it's subjectivity. It's also it's all extra, and most of it's delusion. The eye is just seeing color and shape. Even the brain interpreting it as tree is not quite right, because it's a palm tree. So anyway, it's actually just green and brown and long shape. So, so if you try that for, let's see, what's 15 minutes? 15 minutes is enough, and you can walk anywhere around here.
Yep.
Yep. It's quieter around here than going down to the road. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So back at 1:45.
I'll ring the bell.
Yeah. Okay. A comfortable posture once again. Even though we assume similar postures last time, but it's usually helpful each time to reinvestigate the body. Sometimes these discomforts build up over time. Maybe we have to adjust the posture, even though it's familiar to us, but you know, bodies change over time and different conditions. After a period of activity, maybe the body's altered somewhat, more energized or less energized or exhausted or something. So we'll check in with the body again. First of all, any obvious strong sensations? Just do a general body sweep. Moving attention through the whole body, just noticing any sensations that stand out. A bit of tension in the back or shoulders or something, or a little bit more discomfort building up in the knees, for example. And using the breathing as our main point of reference. Yeah. Humans are creatures of habit, so having a habitual or regular point of reference can be helpful. At the same time, sometimes it just lulls us into sleepiness or dullness. Yeah, that whole breathing again. Yeah, we can look at it in many different ways. It's a breathing process, so if it's not very sharp, you can always try to observe the very beginning of the breathing process, or right to the very end. The beginning and end are the sharpest, or the most place where they change the most. The very beginning, the very end. And then if there is some particular noticeable or strong sensation somewhere, see if you can settle your attention there. And sometimes we're able to kind of allow a little bit of self to come into it. You can slowly allow the sense of self to come into it. You know, what can you observe something, some reaction in the self? You like it, you dislike it. Does it trigger off some memories, trigger off certain kinds of thoughts? If there's nothing particularly noticeable, maybe you could choose a place in the body, for example, like the very center of the chest. In the chest or the abdomen, where generally emotions are more prevalent. It has emotions have a sensation or a physical expression, and they have a mental expression. We say emotion is a state of mind. So just notice if there's anything noticeable there. And if there is some noticeable sensation, just again see if you could just allow the sense of self to kind of creep into it. You know, my knee, can observe just sensation of knee, for example, but if it's my knee, it gets a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? Have I got arthritis? Is this knee going to fall off? Is your body tense up? Are you suddenly aware of my body? I got to do something about this. And if it gets a bit too complicated or too distracting, just go back to the breathing again. You're trying to observe with some calm, clear attention. Just trying to think your way through it is done that for whole life already. It doesn't work. Try and bring some extra calmness and clarity to it. You might see it in a new way. Begin to reveal itself. Even just observing the kind of breathing which happens. Our states of mind, our emotions also influence the kind of breathing that happens. Become more subtly aware of the changing nuances of breathing. That you can try to associate that with associated states of mind or emotions. It's like the back door into the emotions. So bring attention back to the body sitting here once again, and begin to noticing the body continues to be relaxed, or you notice some tension building up. There's tension building up, there's probably putting forth too much effort in the wrong way. You gotta find the right balance to sustain the practice. And then you can relax your posture and open the eyes. One of the simplest teachings the Buddha gave with regard to the perceptual process, he said, if you can just see, just be the, have seeing is just the seeing, hearing is just the hearing, sensing just the sensing, cognizing just cognizing. Then there's no arising of I, no complication. That's no suffering, if you can. Where there is a perceptual process, there is this just seeing, for example, that's we call in Buddhism consciousness. Buddhism consciousness is just knowing, bare knowing the sense contact. Unfortunately, in English, consciousness is usually more complicated than that, but Buddhism is just knowing there is seeing. And then there is a feeling associated with that, a very subtle feeling. It's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's basic, which is really, it's sort of like when there's a sense impression, you want to know if it's dangerous or it's attractive. Dangerous, you better get out of the way very quickly. Those are just instincts, I would say. This knowing and the feeling is just an instinct. It's just like it's in our DNA, if you like. All sentient beings have that. And then the next stage is what's called sanya, or you can say associated knowing. We try and make sense of what we see or hear or smell. So and it's based on memory usually, associated with memory. Because I look at this and it's like a search program going on in my mind. What's that? Flower tree. There's nothing matches that. So, but it was there yesterday, so it didn't bite me, so it must be. I can relax now. It's a neutral feeling. But maybe there's no recognition because I haven't seen it before. So, but it's safe enough, I guess. I just give it some kind of name or something. But usually there is something in your memory that gives you, oh, that's the clock. So then from there there's knowing that, and then there's feeling about it, and then now what to do with it. Clock, sometimes it becomes, there is a reaction immediately. And if something like that before had hurt me, there'd be a traumatic reaction to it. Like, and some people don't even know that what their past trauma is, and they will go through life, and then suddenly there's an event in their life, and there's an emotional reaction. They get emotionally hijacked. Don't know what's going on, what's happening here. But so sometimes we try to be with just say the seeing, but because we have this unprocessed, you say trauma, if you like, memories, just in the memories, it just overtakes it. So maybe we have to deal with that area of our experience. So it's not just a matter of, I just go around, zombie-ish, seeing, hearing, smelling, and say, somebody says, hello, hello, you put the garbage out, just hearing. Just words. There's no meaning to it. There is, dear. No. So, but then maybe there is here you were lost in your seeing, your hearing. Then there was this, and then reaction, anger, so you get hijacked. So sometimes we have to deal with that. So there's different expressions of self, if you like, different levels of self and expressions of self. So fortunately, the Buddha was able to see all these different aspects of self and give us tools to use how to work with them at different levels. So, I mean, that's what the practical part is to feed this body. So, so you can say we have a chance to develop the sensation of eating, awareness of sensation of eating. And that's could be very, very a lot of feeling involved in it, maybe a lot of recognition or a lot of reaction in it. But if you bring the collectedness and the clarity we've been developing at this time into it, you can see it in a different way. So we try to use these qualities. There's formal exercises and informal exercises, you can say, to try to maintain the continuity in our practice, bringing this increased collectedness and clarity into every aspect of our life. And perhaps we can see through these various aspects of so-called self, see how so unsubstantial it really is. But it needs to be a direct experience because we have as like an instinct of, say, the underlying disposition to conceit, to self-reference everything. If you become aware of that, you can notice in your background, little voice going on, your little dialogue, right? Yeah, you know, I'm walking over here, so like I like that, don't like that. I'll take one of those, take one of that. Yeah. And then we bring in all that, all our history with us. Makes it very, very complicated, very, very complicated stuff. And unnecessary suffering. We bring the past with us, but the past is gone. It's finished. We can't change it. It's that we're here and now is the only reality. Yeah. So we look at the food. I don't like that, but that's what's there. As a monk, we're beggars, not choosers. So, but I do kind of hope you made me some good food today. My fingers crossed. But it doesn't really matter. It's okay. I've eaten all kinds of things. Yes. So I think we had a little pause till what, 12 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe if you've brought some food to share and need to unpack it or put it out with a spoon or something, please do so. And then we'll invite the Ajahn to collect some food.
So as the perceptual process, start off explaining it, because this is what we have to relate to if we're trying to see the nature of self. We notice this perceptual process is like a conditioned process. And sometimes it usually happens just automatically. It's hard for us to catch it sometimes. So if we at least take some guidelines from the Buddha, perhaps we can point out, these different points of reference. So there is, first of all, just the physical sense impression, the six senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind is the sixth sense in Buddhism. So these senses operate. Some people might think that, because they learn meditation about focusing attention, then, the way to avoid any kind of suffering, just, like the three monkeys, right? Was it see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, or something other, Well, if that was the case, then, what we can say, what's blind? So people who are blind to be wise, or deaf be wise, or some automatically. but, but we have the senses, so the Buddha's giving us guidance on how to live with the senses wisely. And there's various ways to, various stages, if you like. The first stages is what the Buddha calls the sense restraint. Try to rein in the senses because they can go all over the place. They can just go like, was it like the monkey mind? Yeah. So or the senses go, everywhere. We get too much input, then we just get overwhelmed. Can't actually uh, process it properly. So some degree of sense restraint is helpful. Again, not to totally, obstruct the senses, but some restraint. That is just like, say, for example, when doing walking meditation, rather than be gazing around, if you just lower your gaze, so you reduce the amount of visual impressions you have. Otherwise, maybe you just stand out there and if it's too much. You're looking over the hill, especially here. You can look over the hill and you can see all the, what's over there? That house, nice house over there. When I gave a retreat in New Zealand one time, I mentioned about walking meditation, and I get enough details, I guess. It was a forest monastery, so this couple who came first time they came to the retreat, so they went started to do walking meditation, went for a walk in the forest, and they came back, and I said, "How was the walk?" "Oh, you have wonderful birds here." They say, "They were going bird watching." It was a walking meditation. Maybe if they came to the city, it was relaxing. But the idea was to kind of, if you kind of restrain your visual impressions, less to process in the mind, and it's easier to focus in. You need to find the middle way, you see, just how much your brain is able to process that properly or skillfully by, calmly and wisely, or calmly and clearly and wisely, you see. But once there is a sense impression, again, this is a little bit of semantics, but in Buddhism, consciousness is just knowing there is sight. I translate it as bare knowing. Unfortunately, in English, there's still debate in the modern time. What is consciousness, right? Keep up on the psychological news, I guess. But they still, what is consciousness? What is consciousness? Nobody really knows, but we still use this word. But the Buddhist definition is just bare knowing, just knowing the bare impression. There is sight, there is sound, there is smell, taste, touch, thought going on. But then as part of the, kind of normal conditioning process, like I say, there's this consciousness and there's feeling, very, very subtle feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. These are just instincts. It's like it's our DNA. It's like any sentient being has to preserve itself. So here's a sound. Dangerous. Should I run or should I stay? If it's unpleasant, run. If it's pleasant, I should look again and maybe have something to eat. Maybe some mate. Very, very primal stuff. And then there is usually, if there's enough energy to it, then there is what I call recognition or associated knowing. You try to make some sense of it. What is this anyway, this sound? And that's where the sense of self can begin to creep into it. It's no longer just a basic instinct, because it's based on memory, which is, part of ourself. I have my associated memories of what it is. So maybe I look at this, I have no real, my closest association is candle. It's a candle, it's wrong, right? If I try to light it, it's not going to work. You'll scream at me first, right? So your perceptions can be easily distorted. So don't rely upon your perceptions or your impressions about things, interpretations. The sense data, seeing color and form, hearing the sound, that's just basic fact. I mean, it can be a bit distorted too, because your senses are not that clear either. And we can only see within a very limited range of the visual spectrum. We can't see ultraviolet or infrared, for example. We just see a very limited spectrum of electromagnetic spectrum, very limited, and we think we see reality. Yoo-hoo! There's a lot out there. even he had infrared or ultraviolet senses too, he still missed out a lot. But me probably it's too much anyway. Imagine if I could tune into the radio waves too, you know. Out of a brain aneurysm or something. But just to be humble enough to recognize we only can see in the visual spectrum a very limited amount of reality. You know, okay, that's the human condition. And then when if it become to this the perceptual part, trying to perceive or recognize, even more distorted within the range of what our limited experience is. When I went to Thailand, going to a foreign country, many things I didn't know what they were, you know. I remember going to when I was in India the first time, and I went to this market and they had this strange fruit, yellow fruit. You know, so I'm always a bit curious, so I tried one of those. You know, I ate this fruit. Oh, delicious! Wow, this is the most delicious fruit I ever had in my life. Went back to the market the next day for another one. End of season. There isn't any more. No money I had could buy anymore. It was the best food I ever tasted. Never saw another one until the next year and found out it was a mango. Didn't even know the name of it. Just this funny yellow fruit. You know? And then, of course, I stuffed myself and got sick of them. Yeah. But I had no word for it and no experience of a mango, you know. So, but I was able to, by going to foreign countries, I was able to broaden my horizon. So then I came back to Canada and said, "Where's the mangoes?" There isn't any mango season in Canada. Never. So then, you know, the perception part begins to become even more distorted, you know, and to the point of the Buddha talks about the perceptions of just the distortions of perception. You know, we don't see reality at all. It's totally distorted. So don't believe it. Don't, don't believe in your memories. They're all distortions. And we have to work with them anyway. You know, just recognize it's okay. You know, it's okay that this is not a candle. I can still live with it, you know. And hopefully I just won't make a real embarrass of myself by trying to light it. So and then there is after we make some sense of it, recognize it, then the next thing is there is the old habitual reactions to it. You know, and some of the ones are we have, you know, unresolved negative reactions to some things, you know, certain memories, for example. Other ones are we have positive ones. So then, but most of us are just reaction, habitual reaction. This is what we relate to as ourself, right? Who are we? We're the person who likes mangoes and doesn't like non-candles, you know. No, you know. But you know, it's all just you know part of the fantasy, if you like. You know, but identifying with that, with our reactions to it, it's just a process of reaction. And sometimes, of course, maybe we have to deal with them because if we get caught in our reactions, how calm is your mind anymore, huh? Blown away by our reactions usually. Lack of clarity. We don't see clearly anymore. We're stuck in seeing our old patterns, our old reactions. I was just reading a book about trauma, and this psychologist was talking about dealing with people who have trauma. And he was just describing. He started off. He was a very new psychologist and had his first patients, and he was really, you know, confused by them because you know he realized that they were stuck in the past. These are Vietnam veterans that he was trying to work with, see? And he realized they wouldn't move on. They were just stuck in the past. You know, and there was all kinds of stuff about loyalty to the people who had died and you know their honor as a soldier and all this kind of stuff. But he said the trauma is so bad they just can't move through it. They can't live in the present moment anymore. And then so if they can't live in the present moment, they can't process that trauma. And they just have to keep reliving it again and again and again. They get reborn in the same place, in other words, again and again. They can't move on. So they're just prisoners of that, emotional reaction, basically, I mean, extreme emotional reactions. You had to use many different techniques. One of them was mindfulness, how to help people work through it. But where many of us are stuck with our habitual reactions, and that's what, because they keep recurring, we're stuck in it, keep recurring. We then begin to associate that or assume that's ourself. And it's, if it comes up, if it's happened consistently, it says, what do you mean that the Buddha says myself is impermanent? It's there every day. No, so it's suddenly there's a kind of a reality, what do you say, disinterest or something, or this doesn't quite jive, doesn't quite mix here. So, ideally in the highest level, it's impermanent. But if you're stuck in it, it seems to be permanent every day. The same old fear comes up, same old fear again and again and again, and we can't move on. But the Buddha has given us, fortunately, some useful tools to use. The most important one is mindfulness, to be able to actually acknowledge that. Like these people who had the trauma, these Vietnam veterans, they went to seek help because they didn't see any way out of it. They didn't even know that they were stuck in the past, in other words. They had to have him to say, this is the issue. And he tried to help them move on through it, and give medicine for their nightmares and whatnot. And some of them didn't take the medicine because they thought they was being disloyal to their comrades and all this. So, but the first stage is to recognize, just as the Buddha gives the instructions, developing mindfulness, the mindfulness of states of mind. The first exercise is to try to be mindful of greed, aversion, delusion. These are the three roots of unskillful action, the three roots of karma. Action. This is the action we do, and it has an effect. Okay? So be aware of them first. These are very volatile energies, and perhaps you can probably appreciate. It's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Be aware of your greed, aversion, delusion. What? I don't have any greed. I can't see it. I don't have any aversion. No. But if your mind can calm down and you can kind of step back from your reactiveness, then maybe you can, objectively. I can't subjectively look at my aversion. If I do, I distort it anyway. I try and figure it out. I try and rationalize it. Blah, 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 blah. But if I can objectify it more. Oh, there's observing of the aversion symptoms. It's a little bit more, dispassionate, a little bit more, say, it's objectifying it. But so we can begin to maybe look at it a little bit more clearly as it is. What is this whole kind of syndrome of aversion? If I look at it, if I approach it too subjectively, too subjectivity, subjectively, yeah. then as I get caught in the reactions to it, and then I can't see it. I only see it one way, the old way that I saw it yesterday and the day before, last year. Can't see through it or can't see around it even. So sometimes it's and the important thing is to be able to do this experientially. So ideally it's part of the meditation process. I mentioned a little bit about calm. Did I mention calm and insight? The two kinds of meditation. Calming was of emphasizing the focusing of attention, calms the mind down. And the insight part is emphasized by strengthening awareness or mindfulness. I can see through the way things really are from a calmer point of view. So we have to be able to recognize how to work these two sides of it. Basically, the calmer the mind, the clearer the mind. But if the mind is too calm, There's nothing to see, just bliss and peace. Which is not too bad, but but you have to come out of it eventually, and you're back to square, almost square one, I could say, because okay, there is some follow through. You do realize that there is a different perspective, a different experience. You're not locked in the old experience. But if you just escape to that, you got to come out of it again. It's just suppressed. It's just put to sleep. The difficulties, the emotional reactions are put to sleep. We don't see through them. Only by seeing them can you release them. And it's and most of us basically you can't see it from your ordinary state of consciousness. That's the problem. But with calmness of mind, focused attention, you alter your state of consciousness, like see it from a different perspective, a little more objectively. Who made those words anyway? Though English is a pretty confusing language. So again, back to the practice again, maybe enough talking about it. So, so we take up the sitting position once again, try to observe a comfortable position. If there are some discomfort, if there is some discomfort in the body, we try to relax, relieve it as much as possible. Otherwise, that will attract attention. Once the body is comfortable, we can bring our attention to the condition of the mind. And Ajahn Chah's recommendation was just to have the mind calm enough. Say the mind is too calm, there's nothing to observe. It's just breathing, just calm breathing. The mind isn't calm enough. There's too much going on, and you can't see any of it very clearly. It's like a mental traffic jam. And following on from the awareness of the sensations in the body, maybe you can bring up, some a particular theme. For example, just bring up the theme of, how does greed express itself in the body, or aversion? Buddhism is body mind, they're interrelated. So the emotions express themselves in the body expresses itself in the mind. So we try and bring these two together, just bring up a thought, an image, concept of greed, however that may, however it occurs to you. Maybe you're still hungry. Maybe it doesn't work anymore. Maybe you're too hungry, too well satisfied. But one very energetic one is aversion or anger. See if you can bring up that concept. Maybe it's a memory last time you were angry or something, and just see, look in the body. Rather than stay with the concept or go into your reactions to it, keep your awareness in the body. How is that expressed through the body? How much can you open up to it? You find yourself reacting to it physically or mentally, just back to the breathing again. Calm breathing, calm breathing. And as the mind is, if the mind is calm, that's the best state of mind to investigate these kind of potentially volatile emotions. Not when you're in the midst of it, not when you're caught up with it. Welcome it in to a calm place. If the calmness gets disrupted, back to the calm again, back to the calm. So bring attention back to the body once again, sitting here. Noticing the condition of body, the condition of mind. Just noticing how much we can just acknowledge it, just receive it. The present condition of body, the present condition of mind. Or do you still observe the mind judging and sense of I coming into it? If you do, you just be aware of that too. See how active or how prominent this sense of I is, the sense of identification, the sense of, say, self-referencing. It's just an old habit. But before we can change the old habits, we have to know them, know their secrets, so we can relate to them directly and not just try to manipulate them. Then you can relax the posture and open the eyes. We can change the posture once again to the walking meditation, walking posture, and see if you can apply these same principles. And we have the same principles, but applied, you say, specifics applied in different conditions. So we're still trying to maintain some degree of collectedness, even with our eyes open and more sensory impression. But sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge, but it also helps us to strengthen the ability to focus attention. If we only have conducive conditions all the time, doesn't really, it's just like muscle building in a way. If you're always sitting in the same position all the time or going through the same physical postures, body never gets strong. You have to push it, make a bit of effort against them. Walk faster, walk slower, whatever. Same with focusing attention, with developing this ability, this strength of mind, then sometimes having a few challenges, different environments. But you have to also recognize, what your strength is too. If you're new to exercise, for example, you don't pick up the 500-pound weight, So we still have this quiet environment here. So, you can use this quieter environment. And then when you step outside of here, hopefully you can still take some with you. So it's still kind of like a half monastery here. They still have supper in the evening though. So, but it is a very still very conducive to quietness and calmness and clarity. So maybe for half an hour, and maybe you can try to bring in this exercise in too when you're walking. When you notice the mind is quiet, especially at the end of the path when you stop, just see if you can bring up maybe an image or a memory of, say, anger, for example. And look in the body. Keep it here. I mean, usually because it is pretty volatile, some of these energies, then if we relate to it usually from our mind, get angry and we get angry at the anger there, just back to the body, which is slower to change. I even say the body is really dumb. Doesn't have all the excuses my mind does. It can't rationalize so much. So I can use the dumbness sometimes to advantage. So so, but you just try it out, and if again, if it gets too activated, back to the feet touching the ground again, back to breathing, back to. It's important to be able to maintain a point, a stable point, or a calm point of reference. Otherwise, we don't see clearly, and we're back to the same old patterns. We reinforce the same old reaction patterns again, and not much further ahead. So stay with the calm, and then try to open it up a bit to insight, to clear seeing. Then, so maybe back at 1 o'clock.
No, quarter past one.
Half an hour?
Half an hour? Do you want half an hour?
I don't know. Are you tired? Sleepy? Haven't digested your food? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Half an hour, whatever.
So I'll ring the bell about quarter past one.
So I've been explaining the perceptual process, but maybe some people know it. This whole process, it's, within the context of what we take to be ourself. There's another way to look at it. What I've been explaining also is these, you've heard of these 5 groups of grasping, 5 aggregates. This is how the Buddha presented or defined, described the self. It's got these 5 different qualities to it or characteristics to it. There is this one here, I would say, is this is the embodying or the body, material form rupa. For all intents and purposes, it's the body. I translate it as embodying. It's the elements embodying in this form here. So it is actually a embodying process. It's not actually a thing, but it's various, in the Indian form, Indian context, they say the 4 elemental qualities, earth, fire, water, air. But, maybe we can see it more like it's just chemicals. We're just a bunch of chemicals there, chemical processes, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, calcium. Lots of chromium and magnesium in my fillings, whatever it is, amalgam, mercury, isn't it? Yeah. If you put this number 5, consciousness, in here, I mentioned consciousness, feeling. This is the sanya. This is the recognizing, and then the reactiveness. So the habitual formations or reactions are sankharas. But sankhara is a very interesting chap here because it has 2 sides to it. There's an active and a passive. There is the passive one is our reactivity. It's the same root as kama, sankhara, same root as kama. So it is the active, but when we act, there is the result. So the result is our reactiveness. Those are like habit tendencies, but there also is the active part of it is the kama. So not only are we prisoners of our reactiveness, but we can take, we can take control to a certain degree. We can activate. We understand this, understand the Buddhist teachings. We can actually do some action to reverse the whole thing or free yourself from this. So most of it is the automatic process. If you aren't aware of it, we just spun around and around and around, and here we are reacting to whatever we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch and think. Yeah. But if you understand the process, you can also begin to be able to act, do some action to deal with it more skillfully. Yeah. So the karma part is, now we understand it, and the Buddha gives us some exercises to do, meditation exercise we can engage in to help, say, at least inhibit the self-making process, and maybe even bring it to a halt. So the karma part of it is we can do some active contemplations. That Buddha gives us, the basic contemplations for insight meditation, and to contemplate impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no permanent self. And, maybe at first they're a little bit artificial, just concepts, but the idea is that these three characteristics, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, or impermanence, or imperfection, and no permanent self, are the ultimate characteristics of reality. However, our self, is always, it's a counter. The self is based upon permanence, happiness, and self, right? so, so, so the Buddha gives us, if you do the contemplation of the way things really are, is impermanent. Our body, our mind we have in our DNA, the instinct is for homeostasis, stability. In our mind too, our sense of self wants stability. Me, what is you? This is me right here. This is something permanent. But just take, for example, the body. Say the body is, by DNA, it's already configured to maintain homeostasis. But when you observe it, it's programmed to maintain homeostasis because the body, everything's impermanent. That's why we got to fight against it. So you just have to bring awareness, more mindfulness to how the body really is, without the overlay of how self says the body should be, and you can see impermanence. So it's a fundamental reality of life. And actually, if it wasn't impermanence in the world, we'd be dead. We're living because we change the air from oxygen. We use that. Carbon dioxide comes out. That's change, isn't it? Our whole body is changing all the time. We ingest food, excrete food, constantly changing all these products that come in and out of the bodies. So we need it. We need change to survive. It's the nature of things. But the body is fighting to maintain homeostasis. And once the homeostasis is disrupted, you can freeze to death, or the digestion stops, or breathing stops, or something, and then that's called death. And the same with the mind too. We're always looking for, we want something familiar to relate to. But if I see something unfamiliar, fear comes up, confusion, doubt. I'd like to see the familiar. We're creatures of habit, basically. So we can take the active part of it is that Buddha gives us these contemplations. Besides relating to our habits, those reactive habits, greed, aversion, delusion, for example, the Buddha gives us many skillful means to work with it. It's a bit short but if you read my book here, Working with the Five Hindrances, gives you a lot of details about how to work, very skillful means how to work with greed, aversion, and delusion as sleepiness and dullness, restlessness and worry and doubt. So there's the five hindrances. So if you want the details, it'll take me took me 5 years to explain it. so I haven't got that long, I'm afraid. Read the book on it. But in the active part of it, the Buddha gives us these contemplations of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, and they're in the Pali Canon, a whole variety of different approaches. Basically, it's you contemplate. We are developing awareness of the body. So if you observe sensation, you can look at the sensation, or you can observe the arising of that sensation, right? As I mentioned, the passing away of it. So you can look at it as a thing, as a particular thing, which is more stable, which will help you with the focusing. Or you can look at it in terms of insight meditation as arising and passing away, arising, passing away. And the same with these states of mind too. Feelings, be aware of feelings. You can notice the feelings arising, passing away, and the recognizing, or the memories. As we get older, we all recognize the passing away of memory, right? Your more senior moments. And hopefully, these habitual reactions. I think just as we get older, we can become more mellow, don't we? Hopefully, even mellower to the point of being enlightened, maybe. Or do we just mellow out, become a vegetable? It's probably called dementia, isn't it? Or something. Don't know. But a phrase that keeps occurring to me more recently is, I just don't want to sweat the small stuff anymore. I haven't got any energy or time for it anymore. Just don't bother with it. Some of these younger guys are all getting excited about this and that dinner thing, and oh been there, done that. But sometimes it's helpful to engage in active contemplations. And especially in my book here, the third part of it is about the how to realize the cessation of eye making. And a lot of it has to do with actually active contemplations, meditations, as we undertake the meditation exercises and actually bring up, rather than just observe the breathing, try to observe the breathing as an arising and passing process, arising and passing process. And at first, maybe it's a bit artificial. It's like, we're just kind of maybe like kind of hypnotizing ourselves. But the idea is that to guide us to that realization, because the tendency of the ego is not to see it. Ego is based on permanence, on stability. So it doesn't want to see impermanence, but it's here all the time. It is a reality. It is one of the fundamental conditions of life, characteristics of life, impermanence. And most of the time we suffer because we aren't receptive to it. We resist. The body's getting old. I don't like it. The body shouldn't be stiff. Body shouldn't be, whatever. But well, do I have to tell you it is? Wake up, wake up. All this time you can't recognize the body's like this. Okay, sometimes I forget and I go bounding up my steps and then, okay, I'm not 21, okay. I'm only 51, right? And then when I've just about had a heart attack, okay, I'm 76, okay. Reality gives me a punch in the face. But we have to be reminded. And actually the fundamental translation of sati is to remember. You can say to remember reality, so so maybe we can try some of these active contemplations, maybe, yeah, to round out, I guess it was the whole practice. So if you take up the sitting posture once again, 15 minutes, good enough for questions? 15?
Yeah, that's good.
So we bring awareness to the body, then there's different aspects of the body have different time scales. If we try to observe impermanence over the course of our whole life, it's a bit slow. But if you observe it, the breathing, for example, you can see the breathing changes quite quickly. Not too quickly that you can't catch it. For many of us, the mind is too fast to change. Changes too fast, we can't catch it. But observe your breathing. The breathing comes in, changes to going out. Breathing comes in, changes to going out. So you can just try and observe it in the context of change, impermanence. The in-breath begins, comes to an end, and stops, dies. The out-breath is born, continues, and then it dies. And the in-breath begins, sort of born, matures and dies, if you like. It's like a whole life of itself in a very short time span. It's like our own physical body. You're born, you age, and you pass away. You break up. Body breaks up again. So maybe in the beginning, it's a little bit, it can be a bit artificial, but it begins to sink in slowly. Yes, it's a breathing process, beginning, middle, and end. Beginning, middle, and end. Hmm. Then over a little bit more time, you might notice the different kinds of breathing which happen. And if you come in from the walking, the breathing's a little bit more active, faster maybe, as you come up the hill. As your body relaxes, the breathing becomes slower and more relaxed, deeper, hopefully. Maybe you can observe other sensations which change. Yeah, the wind touching your face or something, cool air coming in, and it passes away. Some muscles might tense up and relax. It's particularly useful in being aware of physical pain. Because usually when we see pain, we kind of say objectify it. It's a thing we have to fight with. Maybe you can observe it more as a process, slowly building up. Maybe you can relax with it rather than react to it in a tense way. And it doesn't still there as a sensation, but doesn't, you say, cross the pain threshold. Then if you notice the mind is a little bit busy, active, see if you can just observe the beginning and the end of a certain thought. You're going to have a thought, oh, it's almost time to go home. There's a thought, it came, now it's gone. Sometimes there are fleeting memories, rising, passing away. You don't have to chase it away. You don't have to react to it. Just allow its natural arising and passing. Especially important emotional reactions. If your mind is clear enough, observant enough, you perhaps can notice the very beginning, slight irritation. It begins to increase. Maybe it's fed by memories, thoughts. Again, it is a conditioned process, and we can decondition it by not feeding that process. Rather than react to irritation, just relax. Relax the irritation. Just a passing phenomena. Many times our mind contracts around these things and then fights with them. That maintains them. It gives even more persistence. And often with especially the passing away of certain things, pleasant feelings, you may notice there is an unpleasant feeling. You want to hold on to it, a pleasant feeling. And then you feel upset, a reactive, negative reaction to it, passing away. And that crushes it, doesn't it? To allow the pleasant feeling to arise and pass away, unpleasant feeling arise and pass away. And as we gain more awareness of this arising and passing away process, we notice there's nobody in control anymore. You know, breath happens by itself. Feelings arise by there's a conditioned process, but I'm not necessarily making them. Yeah, there's no permanent self there to create these things, hold on to them, push them away. They're just conditioned processes arising according to the laws of cause and effect. Nobody there. bring attention back to the body sitting here once again. You can just notice, is this the same body that you brought here at 9:30 this morning? Or is it some body different? How about the state of mind? Is this the same state of mind that came here at 9:30? There's an awareness, there's a insight into the universality of impermanence and how we can, with correct karma, correct action, make some changes for the better. You could have gone to the shopping center and stirred your mind up, maybe increased your greed, or you could have come as you came here and hopefully calm down the greed, aversion, delusion. maybe even resolve it. Depending upon our action, we get corresponding results. Skillful action gives skillful results. So you can relax the posture and open the eyes. So there's a few minutes left for questions. I can't guarantee answers, but or I can just direct you to the book for the answer. As I say, I finished the book on the Beyond Eye Making, but haven't finished the work yet. I see the map, but I haven't traveled there yet. And the previous one, likewise, the five hindrances, working with the five hindrances. I finished the book, but not the hindrances.
Question, anonymous.
Yeah.
Thank you for today. It's really helpful. I'm just wondering, when you're sharing with someone else who's kind of new to understanding that, you know, we're not the body, we're not the material form, and all of that, where do you begin? How do you begin?
Well, I mean, the first thing I always start from is, you know, what's the person open to? Where's the person at? How much can they receive? You know, to try to tune into their understanding. Yeah. And you know, some people are, you say they're very beginners, so start throwing Buddhist jargon at them, it's not going to be any use, you know. But maybe some simple practical thing, you know, just like I said at the end, who is this? What is this body? You say you assume it's you, but can you control aging? Can you control your hair? You know, you got control over your hair growing, getting old, or getting gray. You know, besides dyeing it. I mean, you know, yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, just if you just point out some practical things that most people, you know, they don't really look very deeply. They don't inquire very deeply. You know, if people keep talking about I this, I that, say, who are you? Stops them in their tracks. What, yes, yeah. Are you body? Yeah. Yeah, of course I'm the body. How you're the same body is going to be like this? Is your body going to be like this in 10 years? Are you the same body that you were when you're born? Not quite. So why is it, how can it be your body if you can't control it, you know? If you if you have no control over it. You know, it's going through its own natural aging process without me. What have I got to do with this? Like it's getting on without me, and you're just a passing, a passing show. You don't even need to be, you don't even necessary in the aging process, your sense of a self. And then if they're really open to it, you can also go into their states of mind. How about your memory? I mean, if our brain was not impermanent, as it were, then you wouldn't learn anything. Your brain changes because it is changeable all the time. It's changing all the time. So, if your brain was the same as it was when you're 5 years old, you wouldn't probably be, as intelligent as you are now. Still being a diaper and but people never think about it much, just throw off these terms, it's me, of course it's me, but just if you just contemplate, you just look more closely, I guess people have to be a little bit open-minded, be a little bit have some self-consciousness or self-reflection. Some people don't have that, then it's means what can you do? It's up to them really. But some people even come to it naturally in a way. Like when I was visiting my family, I mentioned to somebody, they asked me, my brother and sister-in-law asked me, what is this Buddhism anyway? And I thought, oh, here's a chance for the first sermon. So the first thing I said was, life is suffering. And suddenly dead silence. And it went pretty flat. And then one of them said, "Oh, I'm not suffering." End of first sermon. But then a few days later, she was being very, very busy. She does this needlepoint, very busy. And I just casually said, oh, if you're not suffering, why are you always, so busy all the time? You can't sit still. And she just turned to me and says, I'm suffering. So she was contemplating by herself. The first reaction was, no, I'm not suffering. I got to be the, happy middle class person, but then she was a self-reflective person. So she was contemplating it, So it just needed a few little seeds and she came to it herself. But not everybody's like that. And most people live, like I say, live in a kind of a deluded world, self-supporting deluded world. The most prominent activity of the self is a self-centeredness. Yeah, you're always seeing things from your point of view, so you keep reinforcing. Of course it's me. Of course it's me. Look at all the worlds around me, right? Egocentric. Think everything is pointing at you, and and so it's just if you don't contemplate it or look more deeply, that's the natural assumption. It's like what the Buddha means by ignorance is one of the underlying dispositions. Just keeps reinforcing itself. Unless you can hear something different or contemplate or something, just self-reinforcing. All our actions, I am doing this. It's mine. I'm doing this. And then you act in ways which are, conform to your view of things and keep supporting it. Till somebody taps you on the shoulder, hey, look over there. Oh, yeah, maybe there is some different way of seeing things from your perspective rather than always mine.
Yeah, those things, there are times like when I'm really tired or somebody might say something, do something, and then there's a reaction to it, or it's a really stressful situation, and so there's a reaction that may be habitual. It's coming up from a past experience. It's similar, or it's the same person that did something to me in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And those times I find anger will come up, or resentment, or some negative feeling, and you get swept away with it. It's very hard to kind of stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, even when I bring awareness to it, oh, I realize, okay, I'm angry, or realizing what's happening. Sometimes it's still hard to stop it, or even if you manage to kind of let go of the anger, for example, it'll come back like a few minutes later, and that habitual thinking brings it up again. So I was wondering, is it a matter of being patient with the practice, and as you build awareness and your awareness gets deeper and deeper, and then are you gradually more able to be aware of it sooner and let go of it sooner?
Yes, ideally,
Yeah.
I mean, if we're developing this mindfulness awareness, say, develop the ability to see more clearly the rising of this. So most people, they only can see the for example, the anger when it is, exploding, in their face.
Yeah.
But naturally, people don't want to see their anger, right? I think who wants to really, it's very humiliating.
Yeah, well, you want to justify it.
Yeah. But it has their coping mechanisms. But if you develop more awareness, more mindfulness, then you can be okay. And the first stage is to acknowledge, okay, maybe I am angry sometimes, a little angry. I'm not perfect. Okay, I admit that. And then you increase it a bit more, and oh, actually, I'm often angry, actually. A little bit more, and my goodness, my gosh, there's a great chasm of anger there. My yeah, we've most of us have led a whole life with a whole backlog of unprocessed anger from since the time you were a little child. When you're a little child, you're even helpless because what can you do? If you do scream and make a scene of it, you get slapped and spanked and not fed and all this, even more more reaction. So and you get frustration too, as well as the anger. Anyway, so we just have a lot of unprocessed stuff. It's just you gotta acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But the more awareness you have, you can say, I say you can begin to unpack it. The more coarse levels, and slowly more subtler levels of it, and you're able to catch the very underlying seed conditions. For example, you can notice maybe when somebody is when you're tired or something, and then somebody maybe they insult your intelligence or something. If you identify with being intelligent, there was one case when I was at the university and somebody I had this job in the kitchen. Then one guy a friend of mine was going to go away. So he said, can you fill in for me? So I said, oh, sure. So he said, tell me what to do. He said, well, you already know already. You don't. And he didn't tell me what to do. And so I got there and I was just, and the assembly line is you got to keep feeding the food to the people, you see. I didn't know what I'm supposed to do. And then there was a big backlog and there was complaints. And then the boss came up and said, you're a stupid idiot. I said, I'm not actually stupid because I wouldn't be at university, I'm just not notified. They don't tell me what to do. but I didn't react to it. She told me stupid, and I knew that everybody at university is not stupid, I mean, come on. Okay, I was ill-informed, whatever, but but for some people maybe that's their sore point, But you can recognize, okay, these are hazardous conditions already there, so be careful. So you can give extra awareness to who you talk to and how much you say and whatever. You can got to protect yourself to a certain degree, but then that can help you. If you get overwhelmed by it, you get no perspective anymore. We try and maintain calm in some form or other.
So then,
some collectedness.
And then is it an opportunity, I guess, to be reflective afterwards?
Yes,
okay,
yeah,
when anger's gone, okay, reflect on what happened and how did that arise? And
Yep.
being more aware.
And another helpful thing is to reflect upon the bad results of you getting angry.
Yeah.
I mean, if people could be more aware of the physical effect of their anger, they poison themselves. all these toxic chemicals come into the bloodstream. You get a adrenaline shot. It takes 90 seconds for the adrenaline to get out of the blood. So if you can just hang in there for 90 seconds, your adrenaline gets flushed out, and you can relax. So people say, they know this, I think, say walk around the block first, or take a deep breath at least. Because it's the first reaction is still very, very volatile. But if you can calm it down, yes. First big flare up of the fire, and just cool it down first. A little bit more space to deal with it more with more skillfulness.
Yeah.
More skillful action. Then you can add your skillful action to, rather than be reacted to unskillfully, and compound that again.
I guess that's the key, right? So very hard to stop the anger from
Initially, yes.
happening, but then if you can pause long enough so
Yep.
that you don't react
Yep.
negatively, do something
Yep.
retaliatory that
Yep.
makes it worse,
Yep.
then you're kind of halfway there, I
Yes.
guess.
That's why people, they get angry, then they get angry at the anger, because it's painful to be angry. All these poison toxins in your system, so it's unpleasant. So you react to the unpleasantness of the anger, and it just spirals out. Then reactions to reactions to reactions, and there's no solution to it. You can stop. Good luck. Yes, it's easy to say. Yes, yeah. Easy for me to sit up on the seat and tell you how to do it. Don't want to be in your seat.
Keep practicing.
Yes. And sort of, I mean, I don't know if I should tip you off, but it can be sometimes a bit frustrating too, because it's not always a steady progress,
No.
Because of course your mind is changing. Sometimes, some days I got it all, I know it all, and then nothing bothers you. Then the next day you're short fuse. In Thailand, one of our practices is also in our tradition was to have, on the full moon and new moon, Buddhist observers say, we do the all-night meditation, you see. Well, it's more like the rule is more like you sit up all night. I don't know who ever meditates all night, but you sit up there anyway, but no matter what state of mind you're in, it's called not lying down to sleep practice. One night a week, because you can sleep sitting up if you can. I can never do that. But we all know, that day everybody's kind of inspired and in a positive mood. The next day, be careful who you talk to, because everybody's irritable and miserable and tired. It's really very short fuse. So actually, we're 2 days after. Yeah. So we know that already. So we just be careful. Everybody's tiptoeing around each other. Yeah. We need all the help we can get. So watch out for the pitfalls. And everybody has their trigger. Sometimes if you don't know people, you don't know what the trigger. What did I say? I didn't really mean it, but it just happened to be the right trigger at the wrong time or something. So if you haven't processed stuff, it's just right beneath the surface, waiting for the trigger to get released. Yeah. And just sitting there, closing your eyes, smiling, it's not going to necessarily deal with it.
I was going to ask you about during the process of meditation, not always, but quite often, I get a very warm surge within me, very warm, for a few minutes, and then it just all passes.
Is it pleasant?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pleasant.
Do you notice the state of your mind?
No. Maybe that's where that's at. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not noticing. But yeah, it's a real strong sensation through my body.
Do you notice what the conditions of your body are at that time?
Very relaxed.
Yes, yeah.
And it often is partly through the meditation. It doesn't happen at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just very, very warm.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes just the, there can be a lot of tension kept in the body that we aren't conscious of. When you relax the body, then, it's the blood begins to flow more naturally, and, sometimes like a big release. It's like you have a new body in a way, you know. Other times there is a phenomena in when the mind gets more focused, gets more deeper focus. They have what they call a surge of joy comes up, which has many different manifestations. Sometimes it is warmth, sometimes it is this tingling sensation all over the skin, what do they call it? Hair like your hair is rising or something. You get this tingling from the sense of joy. You call it rapture, even rapture. When the mind gets really calm, the deep states of calm, and it's like there's these underlying states of consciousness which are freer of self interference, you could say. They're closer to how the body and the mind really is. The Buddha said the mind is naturally radiant, for example. So we can naturally, but but most people are not very natural, because the self is interfering all the time and telling you how the body should be, and whatnot, and don't allow the body and the mind to be really as they really truly are, open, expansive. And there are some meditations that try to open those channels or experiences too. Yeah. So it's up to, so I mean, generally speaking, as we develop the meditation process, some unusual things can happen. But generally, we just say, don't make a big issue of it. Just recognize, okay, that's what's happening now. That's it's new. It's as long as you don't, it's not going to be threatening to your health or whatever. Just say, okay, yes, it's just one of these phenomena. This is technically something like translation, something like it's just mental phenomena, sapawatama, natural phenomena or something like this. Yeah. Everybody has something different. Some people have visions, some people have lights, some people have floating bodies and all kinds of stuff. And I say, well, and then the tendency is think, oh, I've got some special powers. I see people's faces in my mind, my meditation, and then I went to some teacher and I asked him about it, and he says, "You're picking up the consciousness of the dead people." He said, "In this area, it was up in northern Thailand. There was a big battle, and you're picking up the consciousness of all the dead soldiers." It'll freak me out. I don't want to do that. No. But then I noticed I reflected upon it, and I didn't believe it. I mean, and this monk's supposed to be psychic too, but I didn't believe him, because the pictures were of children, of young people, old people, females. It wasn't all young soldier men, So I don't think that's right. When I asked Ajahn Chah, he just first of all just said, it's just a phenomena. Don't make a big issue of it. Some people, they can get more involved in it and they think, oh, I'm seeing, I can read people's minds, or I can forecast the future. This person will come to me tomorrow morning and offer me some food or something. He said, don't make a big issue of it. So I just kind of looked at it more objectively, and then then suddenly I had an insight. Just I had a natural tendency when I was traveling quite a bit, and to take pictures of people's faces, check people out. And I couldn't speak to them in a language, so I just took a picture of their face and I stored them in my laptop, you see. And as the mind calmed down, they came up. So I was very good at remembering people's faces, you see. Hopeless with names. but very good with faces. Yeah. But when I got more objective about it, basically I stopped taking pictures and I forgot the faces too. Were you here before?
I think you can get caught, personally, sometimes I can get caught in because it's pleasurable.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
then you start thinking, oh, I wonder if that'll happen next time.
Yes, yes, yeah, yes.
Those sorts of
Yeah,
things
but
that go
they're all
on.
impermanent. It's depending upon, kind of, what stages of consciousness you're you're releasing, and levels of relaxation the body releasing. So I'd be very careful not to, expect it or
Yeah,
try and hang on to it,
attached to it.
attached to it. Yes, yeah, yeah. Just allow it to be when it's there. It's like to be able to allow the pleasant feeling just to be there. And when it goes, also let it go. Most people, they want to hang on to it, and they crush it. And it's not really a pleasant feeling anymore. You're trying to hang on to your pleasant feeling, it becomes desperation. Not pleasant. You chase it away most of the time. So it's a real lesson in permanence, that one. It's pleasurable anyway. If it's unpleasant, you're happy to give it a little kick to be impermanent. Help it to be impermanent. Yeah.
So we might finish up, and thank you, Ajahn, for being able to be here and offer us some teachings and guidance. And we hope to see you again. Hopefully your visa status continues to allow you to be here, so we can see you maybe next year.
All impermanent.
And thank you for everyone coming out today on short notice to have this retreat, those that are here and also online as well. And also whatever Dana has been offered monetary-wise, that goes towards the Ajahn's travels, his flight up here from Sydney and back again, and also travels back to the monastery. It's about 3 hours back to the monastery after
2.5. Yeah.
2.5 hours, yeah. A bit of travel. And thank you for the lovely food that you brought. Lovely lunch. And please do remember to take your bowls and whatever utensils you bought, take them back home with you. And so we'll see you next time. The next retreat day is Sunday, the 13th of July, the first of the 4 Vasa retreat days, and they're going to be half days, just up until lunchtime. And certainly this coming Thursday, we'll do a bit of a check-in, debrief, and remembering what we heard from Ajahn Tiradhammo's teaching. So if you can make it, that'd be great. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.